what we've really been accepting is that the present cycle of time in which we are passing through was a construct based upon the relaxation of our pineal organs during a period in which Sirius is farthest away or moves away from what we understand the Earth to be. Now, when we understand stars, if we're going by the model of the plane Earth, or what they call, or what I refer to as a stationary Earth, I don't necessarily view the Earth as a plane, as a globe or a flat, continuous surface. I see it more as a plane, as was written by what the ancestors were saying. It's an endless plane that is manifest outside of the realm of creating a continuous movement towards the higher dimension. So it's not, when you read the so-called Bible and it talks about the planets, it doesn't necessarily describe them as planets. It describes them as wandering stars. And when you look at some of the old models of the plane, or what they call the Earth Hebrew model with the Sheol, which is hell, whatever, at the bottom and all of that, you will see that there are also images of what we understand the stars to be, which may or may not be reminiscent of all of the connective or kinetic energy that exists outside of what we perceive the atmosphere to be. If we understand that, if we're taking, let's say, aspects of the Bible as true, right, then it would say that there are the waters above and the waters below. So everything outside the dome would basically be like, or we would perceive space would almost be like an endless ocean of, I guess, hyperdimensional water. I don't know. But it is reminiscent then of the water, because if everything is reflective of one to the other, we can see, indeed, we can see then that there is a reflection, just for the fact, like if you were in an area like a pool in a gymnasium and you walked in the pool, you would see the reflection. When the lights was out, you would see the reflection of the water at the top of the reflection of the water would basically cascade throughout the entire thing. So that shows us that reflections exist because water emits light. You understand? And can reflect and reflect light. You can't light a match underwater, but it is possible to use a laser underwater. You understand? So when we think about light in its ultra, let's say, for lack of a better word, ultramagnetic sphere, big up to Cedric L. We see that we are starting to increase our level of melanin intake. Like if you notice recently, you might, no matter how much rest you get, sometimes you just can't stop feeling tired. Because what we are pulling down in vibrational UVs right now is triple the output of what we had almost last year. So when you check the UV count, we black people, we don't really think about stuff like that. See what I'm saying? Like we don't think about things like that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not something that's necessarily ever a problem for us. The only time the sunlight and stuff became a problem for us is when we started to deal with other people's genetics inside our bodies. You understand? So the thing about the so-called American male, Black American male, or Black American female, so-called, is that they have a heavy duty melanin intake system that is really backed up by anomaly within their own melanocytes. That 3 strands, well, what we perceive as sunspots, if we're understanding that the sun and the moon, now again, this is just strictly going from the scientific method of us going through different people's hypotheses as to how this earth or how this plane or how this whatever exists that we're dealing with. We should never be so rigid that we can't recalibrate aspects of what we know, the fundamental truths aspect of that, by discovering new things that help us basically give more emphasis to what it is we're striving to prove, which is the fact that there's never been a time that we have not been here, and there's never been a time, because there's never been a time that Allah's not been here. The only time that we weren't here was before we were manifested. You see, but even in that time of not being manifest, if you believe in the eternity of the all creator, then you would know that you existed within the mind's eye of that thing, that therefore you existed in such a highest aspect of realm. The only place that you could receive in the physical manifestation of that would be the highest of everything. You understand? You ever think about something for a while and then really think about how you want to do it, and then once you actualize and actually do it, and then finally it's done, and then you sit back, that feeling that you have, that feeling of pride, that feeling of accomplishment, you see what I'm saying? Like that was us, or that's us. However, we fell from that because we started to get caught up in the same things that we was trying to get away from prior to the whole situation being washed away. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I would say that it would affect us in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Some people, it might make them more sleepy. Some people might make them more energetic. Some people might make them more introspective. You know what I'm saying? Some people have more bursts of energy. You might feel overly emotional for a certain reason because your melanin intake, we're not understanding, but it's actually being dived up. The rads that's coming from the top part of the dome is leading to an aspect of plasma regeneration that Revelation, the book of Revelation, refers to as the son of men, meaning that, when this thing goes plasma, which we'll discuss in a minute, everything is about to get switched up, and everybody that's artificial is not going to be able to sustain. So when we talk about melanin, we talk about the hand of God. This melanocyte, as you see, is in the shape of a hand. So these hands that derive from the little black nucleus, right? The black dot, right? See the black gene inside the brown gene? You see that? See the black gene inside the brown gene, which then basically creates an energetic relay through the nucleus, right? That goes into what's called the Golgi apparatus. A Golgi apparatus is what attunes the nucleus of the melanocyte into the melanosome, which then creates the melanin granules that all turn into other little hands that form a giant web pattern in your skin in the upper epidermis, which we refer to as melanin. Okay, then these dendrites. Remember, there was a place in Lower Nubia called Dendara, and on the top of that ceiling of that temple, they had the calendar, what they call the calendar of Dendara. Okay, and the dendrite calendar, if you look at it, is basically measured in the same inference as the flat Earth, as the symbol for the UN, as the symbol for the EU. You understand? So we're talking about how these dendrites, right, which break down into the different, what they call fourfold fashion of what we call melanin. Black meaning us at the bottom. See, the EU melanin or the U melanin. U like Eurasia, right? So the U melanin, the black U melanin, that is what produced the brown. The brown produced the red produced the yellow produced the white. Okay? So each one of these corresponds to a different aspect of humanity that came after this. So if we accept that, and we accept that then melasomes or melanin is the basis, right? It's the manifestation of what we will refer to as the universal waters, that we also refer to as dark matter, dark energy, that quantified itself into a non-linear fashion that is archetype and expressed through beings who are enabled with this power to access all of the UV rays that's coming down from the succession from the ultraviolet down to the infrared. Okay? So what makes you a human being is the ability to assimilate all of this and understand that the hand of God is with you always in the form of your, again, arm, leg, arm, head. Because that is the archetypical frame of the fashion or avatar that was used to slay all of the miscreant genetic defects that existed in the so-called pre or post-flood world. And we became the basic archetype for it on earth as it is in heaven, and imbued with all of the energies to do so, in which these wandering stars that we call planets were actually there to use for us in constellation form to be able to read the intent of Allah, so that way we could manifest that. That's when you're using astrology for the right way, astronomy or astrology for the right way. You're doing it for the benefit of the people. But when you're doing it to manipulate the people, you see, that's when it became a problem. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that understand how to manipulate the firmament because they've convinced everybody that it's something else. And they've convinced everybody that the hand of God is not real. Therefore, they stop seeing it within themselves. Therefore, now they can be reduced, and the access to God's DNA can be brought forth through any one of these other strains. But these strains is basically passing away. If the white one is going to go away, then eventually the yellow one's going to go away. If the yellow one goes away, the red one's going to go away, and eventually the brown one's going to go away, and then it's only going to be the black one. The only way to stop that is for each one to basically regraft itself or rebreed itself back into itself to get back into us, which is what the Chinese is trying to do right now. Everybody got it? This is why melanin is $3.46 a gram, and Caucasian DNA is not really worth anything. It don't even chart. So they're so racist, they don't even want their own DNA. Yet they still propose it. They still prop it up like it's the best thing in the world. But it can't be if they're basically extinct. They're actually literally going extinct. Though they are extinct at this point. This is why they're going so crazy. Because they're moving closer to the extinction. And whenever a species or somebody like that happens to people, it becomes a situation. So that's why they're really getting now into the origins of who they are and why they came there. But we've been building on this stuff. We've been building on the experiments of the high scientists and all of that pre-flood, anti-flood world stuff that happened after. The reason why they're going so much into Tartary is because that was where a lot of them were manufactured and eventually wiped out because of what Genghis did. When Genghis went in there and just disseminated all of those so-called tribes. A lot of those tribes, some of them weren't even really human, as we understand them human to be. A lot of them were leftover genetic hybrids, left over from the experiments that was going on in Canaan, that was going on in Moab, that was going on in whatever other nation that the Israelites passed through as they was cleaning all of this stuff up. And then those people who dwelt in those places that were then able to convert, according to Deuteronomy 29:10, they were now able to keep the covenant, and they worked with the traditional humans made in the image, to then get rid of all of these things. But in the process of doing that, a lot of stuff happened. So you have to understand, we were much bigger, much taller. And in the times that these happens, the people who descended were able to keep up the program and keep their foot on the devil neck. So back then, over in the East, I didn't even get to America yet, but back then over in the East, they had, this is what they had. This is what they called it. So when they're talking to you about Tartary and all that, like, that's real, because Tartary was the Carthage in Asia, because I proved that on the last video. Now the other thing is, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Look, this is an older map of what they call Tartary, when it was Asia, or when we refer to it as Shinar. Okay? So now this Mizraim right here, this is really just this was Egypt, right? But Mizraim is over here. Egypt was over here. But this also shows that there may have been a contingent of us from over here that was there, being that we transversed the whole land. We transversed the whole globe. So see, this is Shinar. Here go Ethiopia, Cush, right? Which is now the demarcation line between the lands of the father and son. See, the land of Ham. See, the land of Cush. Written right out here on this map, consistent with what we read in chapter 47 in the Circle 7 Quran. Right? Now we know of King Mesha, the Moabite, who was also there of King Shamash, and his descendant allegedly was another king named I forget his name. It's in my phone, I think. Anyway, you see, they have Eden right here. Look, Taria. See? Now, when it was Shinar, this was Havilah. This is going all the way back now to the ancient time. There's no Caucasian people during this time that we're seeing in this map. We got Canaan, Mizraim, Elam, Armenia, Eden, right? Mesha, China. Now, all of this, Antaria, all of this consisted, right, of the land now of Cush, from the Shinar going to the extreme east. All of this was taken over. So the people who came here were also people who were from Mizraim, and after the invasions and stuff like that, they started to move out, just like we have Moors from here and what became Havilah. Now it's interesting because Havilah was also referred to as Arabia. And so this is where they started to move up further out this way. You know what I'm saying? And basically started to lock everything down, because up in these hinterlands, you got all of the descendants of those people who, again, were the ancient Carthaginians or whatever, who then, from the times before that, were then the ancient so-called Hebrew, Canaanite, Moabite peoples that worked to destroy and get rid of all of the old giants that descend from the head giant, which was a dude named Raphi. When you read the Bible, his name was Raphi or Rifi, which is interesting that the Moors were called the Riffins, and the head of the Sultan of Morocco was also referred to as the Lord of the Atlas, because allegedly that's where Atlas was bound by the Moors for eternity for his transgressions against Allah. So again, it's all of these references to these ancient peoples and these ancient things that were shut down by the Muslims, right? Both of so-called Asiatic, or what people misnomerly refer to as African. So this is an example of this. Now, when they try to tell you about everybody in the East and Russia and these people, they're always painting these people like they white. But then when we see people like this, look, these are the three kings of the Netherlands. All these Tartary niggas, they never seen this. Look at these Moors. Look at these Moors. Now, first you see how big the horse is. So allegedly these dudes were 17 feet tall. Look at the fez. Look at the conical fez. Sufi type fez. Look at the Kufi helmet. Look at the joint. Look at the beads in the shape of the menorah. See the joint in the front? See? Hebrews. Beards. So we know they're not Africans, because Africans can't grow beards. Or most Africans don't grow beards. I don't know if y'all know that. Most of the Africans that did grow beards and stuff like that, where were they located? Usually around the coastal areas. That's why you see a lot of the people in so-called Egypt, Kemet over there wearing the prosthetic beard, which was really a energy device that would charge their pineals. That's why sometimes you would see women wearing them. See what I'm saying? But again, we go by what the devil tells us, so we're not even supposed to know that these people exist. But look at their names. Look, these are the people that built the Kremlin. No, I'm sorry. Here we go. Wait, sorry, this thing. It's like a hair trigger on this thing, man. Damn, I hate when they do that. Throws off the momentum of what I'm saying. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, look, 17-foot Tartary kings. Look, Eric Evergood of Denmark, Inge, the elder of Sweden, and Magnus Barefoot of Norway. Meeting of the three kings in Kuglab, Sweden. So when you talk about that, these were the three Moorish giant kings descended from the ancient Hebrews or whoever, Canaanites or whatever you want to call them, Phoenicians, who decided that they was going to bring all of the giants and all of the monsters that existed out there into balance and civilize them or wipe them out. And so all of them Tartary buildings and all that stuff you see out there, these Moors, these people built that stuff. You understand? But they're not showing us these people of Black History Month, are they? Because Black History Month got to revolve around just the little independent things to make you think that this was all a singular event. But look, see this Tartary horse right here? Look how they do you. This is right here in Florida with me. I'm going to show you. Wait. Pause that. Look, this how they doing it where I'm at. Wait. Here we go. Let me use this one. Of course, that's a small one. Look, this right here in Florida. See this? It's in front of Seminole Casino. It looked like it was there before that. Let me zoom in. You see how big this thing is? And it's a Pegasus, Tartary horse Pegasus, stepping on the dragon. It's this horse right here. It's this. You see? The same horse they got in the Denver airport. Okay? You see how huge this thing is? If you drive and by, it might take you like 10 minutes to get past the whole thing. That's how big this thing is. And this here in Andalus. So let's look at that. They're talking about. All right, here we go. So again, we just shutting down the whole thing that we were global. We were plain white people who existed all over and had a trading empire that went to different places where everybody. Look, a place called Tart or Moor in the frozen sea of Tartary, and us to march with them upon the ice. Horenius thinks that the expeditions of the Scythians, right, into America might have happened around AC 400, and the affairs of the North were in the utmost confusion by their mutual wars. See? Which together with them being overflocked with people occasionally by rambling to all quarters, meaning all four corners of the planet. And then 'tis probable that those who lay nearest America were forced to take sanctuary in that country. This seems to be confirmed in the account of the Americans give of the Chitimachi. Remember I talked about the Chitimachi? The Chitimachi or the Chitimacha or the Chitima. A barbarous people. Remember, barbarous don't mean savage. Barbarous mean Moorish. Barbarous people, barbarian, Barbary, Berber, Bambara. Bedouin, same thing, who much resembled the old Scythians in their hunting, rambling, and other customs. According to them, they came into what? Mexico, about the 700th year of Christ, by which 'tis probable that they had peopled the most northerly parts of America before that time. The straits bear his name, found people in the complexion and habit and customs resemble of the Samnians and the Tartaries and the Tartars, and the appearance of the animals found in the northern parts of America do much very resemble those of Tartary. Okay, look, the skull of the princess Rosawanka with tiara and necklace in Poland claimed to be a Scythian skull, but the skull appears to be a black woman because the Scythians, the Sarmatians, the rest of these peoples was Asiatic black people. And they just proved it, and those people had a cross connection over here that came all the way from Mexico, right? All the way up to the northern parts of the United States. Ding dong, that's it. You see what I'm saying, Moors? That's it. So whatever they want to tell you, whatever they want to try to claim and act like whatever, this is what it is. Look, the necropolis at the Varna in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, 4,500 BC, you got black kings buried in gold. It's a black skull because if this one is black, the Scythian one is so-called Asiatic or black, or let's say just melanated, then this one is because these were the people that were there with the high culture. So no, the Tartarians were not Caucasians. They were not even Asians. Those people wasn't even made yet. We didn't even make the Asians yet when we was doing all of this. Okay? And the Asians know it. That's why they over there right now in Africa, taking over, having sex with as many women as they can, raping people, eating people. Look up the Chinese dude that ate his guides, the guides that took him in a safari, wait till he got in the jungle, drugged them, stabbed them or whatever, then ate them. But the Africans, that's what I'm trying to say. This is who they want you to go back over there to now. Think about the push they giving you right now. You are descended from a slave. Yeah, you about to get the reparations. Yeah. But I'm just showing you that all your peoples was always wound up back here. So what you going over there for if they all coming over here? So again, we just proved who the Asiatics are. We just proved who the Tartarians are. We just proved who the Moors are, the Barbarian Moors, because it said that they were a barbarous people, right? So we know that that means more. That don't mean what the white man tried to tell us it mean, which is savage. No, savage means savage. A barbarian is somebody like Hannibal. So barbarians were Carthaginians. So I'll be a barbarian. I'll be that. Quicker than I'll be an African. Not because I don't like Africans. That's not the point. The point is Africa, as we understand it, was always used as a designation to describe Libya, which was the juncture point that we would use to control whoever else was living in the interiors of Africa, because all of our civilized peoples lived on the coast, going from Mauritania to Morocco to Algiers to Tunis to Tripoli, which is Libya, all the way to Egypt, all the way down to Havilah. I just showed you the map. Ethiopia, right? Always the coast areas, and then going into the Far East. Everybody else that was on the interiors was Christians. These Africans was dealing with Christianism and tribalism because they again were going through their own situations that had nothing to do with us outside of what we were doing in terms of the trading. Trying to get the ones that was going to be civilized to adopt some sort of civilization. Because civilization is a civilized nation. Okay, so we're clear. All of the Eurasian people originally were Moors, descended again from, if we're going back all the way now to ancient Egypt, we're getting into the people they call the Thracians and the Elamites and these other peoples that went further north and all of that, and they started working on grafting and doing what they was doing with the peoples out there. Because it got to the point where everything was basically eaten again. So it wasn't a need for certain things to go down. So within that, you had different types of people, different types of races, and different types of beings that we wouldn't even understand now. But they show it to us in comic books and TV shows and all this crap all the time. So if we look at the world, it's always been ruled by Asiatic people. Always. Always. And they were always seen as the ones with the beards. Always. Always. Right? Even if it wasn't a full beard, it was some sort of goatee or some sort of something to show that they growing their hair. Why? Because growing your hair was the covenant with the Most High. It said we weren't supposed to cut our hair. Right? That's what decreed. Because we were really the only ones with hair. Everybody else, a lot of these dudes had fur. So we had to have prescribed laws on how to deal with a lot of these people. So one of those laws became the codes of Hammurabi or Hammurabi, in which it taught you how to deal with certain people. Exactly. Again, on the coast. Liberia's on the coast, right? You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Always on the coast. Always where we was doing the trading. We wasn't going in there like that because we didn't have to, because we ran the whole thing from Libya. I'll go over that again. I'll show you the definition of Africa and slave and all that again, just in case you ain't see it. So look, here they go. This was the great Khan. Look, beard, nappy head, Asiatic, hook nose type Asian. Then you got him. Look, this is the Ethiopian dude, the Negus, right? Then you got Mule, the Barbary Moor, right? You see? How come we never see these pictures in Black History Month? How come we don't know who these people are? Why is it that the Chinese people are the only ones, they always claiming all of these great things, we watching all these flicks, not knowing that we watching about our own people? But we don't know. And they not trying to tell us, because now they trying to take the place of the grafted one. So look, this is 3/2 of the world. He ruled 1/3 of the world. 1/3 of the entire world was just under him. He was so draconian in the grafting and killing these things that when he felt he didn't get it right, he just wiped out thousands upon thousands of them and then started over. We wasn't that we wasn't that draconian. You understand? That's why Dracula come from his line. You see what I'm saying? Whereas the Barbary Moors, we trying to basically raise the vibration of the world, raise the culture of stuff, right? And then try to create a more civilized type of devil. This is where we get the Italians and these type of people from. It's already out there like this. It can't be racist if the white people is talking about this. If we're the only ones with no RH, recessed monkey DNA in us, then that means we're not like everybody else. You understand? If I can grow a goatee at least and a real thick mustache where it'll connect if I let it, and these guys from this other side of the world, they got it, but they can't do it, then there's an inhibitor in them that I don't have. So how can I come from them if they have the inhibitor and I don't? Answer me that. They can't. There is no answer for that, because you can't go against what genetics are. Like you could try to act like it's that, but they know what it is. So we keep talking and going in about the monkey aspect of it, but that's not the only thing these things was grafted from. You know what I'm saying? And it was different types of monkeys for different types of things. In Africa, it was the troglodyte nigger. You know what I'm saying? In Asia, it was like the orang pendek or like the Java or whatever, like in India. And then in the steppes, in the Urals and all of that with the white people, this is where we get the Khazarians and we create these type of people from. You understand? Because all of it is based on genetics. All of these things that we're dealing with, everything that we see in life is based in genetics, but they took biology out, so they make it seem like genetics are not important, but that's what's running everything. So we're talking about Atum, Atum, Adam, right? So that's A-O-U. That's 3 different vowels, right? Sometimes Y. But in that, let's say, like this says, Atum first created himself from the mound of the dust. Boom. Then Atum first, scientists say that we are all made of stardust, which is carbon, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. Then Adam the first, made from the dust. Christians saying that from the dust we came, from the dust we shall return. So the dust being the cosmic element, right? The actual melanin, the melanocyte, the actual cosmic dust that creates everything and carbonizes it to bring it into a physical balance. Now, as you look at that, the problem is we break everything up in our minds, so we don't understand that everything is connected by the genetics. The very genetics that we are talking about is different. It's actually also what binds us together, because of the fact that genetically we are more anchored to a dominant archetype than an inferior one. So we talk about Asians or Asiatics at one time. This is how big these people used to be, or we used to be. You don't never see, and when you do see the big white ones like that, they're malformed. The Asiatic ones are always still in their proper form, no matter how big they are. So what does that say? But up until recently, they won't even accept the fact that things like giants and things like that exist, when it's so much deep in our culture that we have totally ignored the fact. So again, let me crush some more heads with the Tartary thing, more images so you see what I'm talking about. These are real Tartarians, okay? Look, this is the kingdom. When they talk about Georgia, the kingdom of Georgia, like Georgia, Russia, like Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, there's got to be a connection. And the connection got to be with the Asiatics. And we just read that the Tartars came over here, right? And went all up on the North Coast, right? Right? Okay, so look. Hungarian king, possibly Charles I, 1288, 1342. So let's take the ones off. That's 288, 342. Holding the globus cruciber. See, remember I told you about the battery. See, I told you about the battery? What is he doing? Holding the battery, holding the scimitar. Look at the scimitar. Then look at the scimitar over here. Look at the big scimitar right here. Come on now. Right? Cross-bearing herb or orb. It symbolizes the Christ cross, dominion over the world. See? Charles Robert was the first king of Hungary and Croatia from the house of Anjou, meaning he was a Hebrew. He was an original Jew that was in league with James and them. You see what I'm saying? In Europa, again, showing the connection. The Chronomicon Pictum, illustrated chronicler of the Kingdom of Hungary in the 14th century. So, there was no white people in Hungary, in Bulgaria, in Croatia, in Azerbaijan, in Turkmenistan, in Scythia, in Sarmatia, in Taurian, in Tartary, period. The only ones that was there was the ones that was being worked on genetically. Because what I think happened was that there was a schism after the whole thing went down, and in certain tribes, certain clans decided that they was going to do their thing and graft these things to do what they was going to do and deal with some of the ancient races that was still laying around. But now, because we had dominion over things, they had to get shut down and thrown in the back somewhere. So again, I'm showing and proving. Look at this more. Look. So this is a Chinaman, like the Chinese people I see today. No, this is how dark they was. This is how it was. This is why they call them the Black Tartars. Okay, because when they came through, it was over. No quarter, none. We keep thinking that this was the only thing that they was doing, but this right here is a mixture of something. You understand? And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like they should know. They should really accept what their real history is publicly and stop using the Freemasonry thing to keep it a secret from their own people. Because that's what's more just driving these people crazy, because they're not telling them that the sun that they feel sizzling and burning them up like that is actually not going to stop. It's only going to intensify. Why? Because we're now going into the plasma phase. Okay? I talked about this over 15 years ago in a series I did called Dark Plasma Synthesis. And now it's come full circle. So this plasma ball, imagine the sun looking like this. The sun about to look like this in a second. Now, when this happens, this right here, you know what this is? This says it's the filament in space. But remember, if there is no space, the way we understand space to be, and space is basically the universal waters of the heaven, if we're taking the model of the shul and the firmament and all of that as true, because some Moors and some people don't. However, I know what the prophet said, Moors, hold on to your Bibles because you're going to need them to indict the European. There got to be something real in it. So I'm looking and going in and finding what is actually applicable to us. And really, most of the stuff in it is really about how to deal with the people that's not from your nation. All the Bible talk about is clans, tribes, nations, states, empires, kings, queens. That's it. And slaves. That's it. And how Moors started to hate on each other and start to create different beings to send to attack other people. Sound familiar? Why do you think whenever two Asiatics got a problem, the first thing they do is call the devil? That's an inherited behavior. This is something that's been happening. This is not just an advent of modern Western civilization. This is something that we've been doing. We've been using these machines, these finger puppets, these soulless finger puppets, as in wars, proxy wars against each other for a long time, and it wound up taking all of us over. So the idea of them dimming the sun is because of what I'm talking about, is the fact that this plasma aspect, this plasma energy is causing planes to fall. Planes is literally falling out the sky right now. One just fell in Florida, the other two. This is the second one in 2 weeks. I'm scared to get on a plane. One just crashed in Ethiopia. Look it up. They're falling out the sky left and right. Look at a compass. Go get a compass and look at the compass. The whole compass is different. The directions are switched up. Don't believe me. Go and look it. Go get one and look at it. But first, you got to know how to read a compass. Most of the Freemasons that's in this type of thing, they don't even know how to read compasses. They don't even know how to read a ruler. They just deal with it symbolically. Because remember, these things came from something that was graphic, so they don't know how to create anything. They can only mimic creation. There's an app on their phone that they got to put on their phone to let them know when the UV up so they can go inside. Did you know that? Did you know that? No. There's black people that's with white people in romantic relationships and don't even know that. Why is that? Remember I told you the melanocytes? Remember I showed you the melanocytes, the hands? The hand of God? That's the hand that you see in the images of Arkenton when the rays is coming down from what the occultic people call the oversoul, which is really this. This is the reset thing. This is what resets everything. When the sun get like this, and it says what? In the Bible, it says that the sky will turn black and it will become as black as sackcloth. Isn't this sackcloth? Do you see any stars around this? No. And it said the sun or the moon will turn red because the moon reflects the light of the what? Right. And if the sun is this color, which is ultraviolet, hyperdimensional, what does that mean? What type of energy is coming down from it? Remember, see what I'm saying? So this energy is where? Is this energy at the bottom of the spectrum or at the top? Right. So this means that this is God energy manifesting, blowing this thing up, turning it into something else. And under increased aspects of radiation, what happens to melanin? This is ultraviolet radiation. What does melanin do to ultraviolet radiation? What does it do? It adapts. That's one way to say it. What does it do, though? Exactly. It transmutes it. It brings out the best in you. These people don't want no nuclear war. They don't want that. You seen in the book of Eli, we lived past that shit. So when the Masons on the apron, they show you this. They slowly preparing you. They slowly getting you ready. They've been doing this because they know this is how everything gets redone. And it's been happening like this for a very long time. Where is these colors on the spectrum? Where are these colors on the spectrum? See this eye right here? That's it. That's the plasmasphere. This is what they've been preparing and trying to get everybody around. So when it goes down, they have a tight-knit community that will be able to survive this thing. This is what they've been preparing themselves for. The actual reset of it, because it's resetting their orientation. They're not going to be in control anymore because the actual feminine that is represented by this symbol is actually being recalibrated back to its original phase, which means they won't be able to exist in their present structure, which is why they're going extinct, because the grafting process that was used to create them was not absolute to keep them around. Do you understand? So since then, they've been striving to, one, deify their God, right? Who we know is Baphomet is just the false door for that. This is their God. This is it. The pseudo-Dionysian Areopagite, also referred to as Apollo, also referred to as Apollonius, Adonis. That's why the dude in Creed's first name was Adonis Creed, because his father was Apollo Creed. the castrated male, the red, white, and blue, the liberty, the perfected man in their eyes, a black man that they can control through his lower self, which is concealed through the apron. Got it? Because that dude is a trans. Because that's what they do. They was bringing us up in this in hip hop when they created that. Remember that song Trans Europe Express? That song became the basis of Planet Rock. And who made Planet Rock? The pedophile, right? Probably a trans himself. You see? A lot of the original hip hop that we listened to came from that era. Notice this? That's Fidel Castro, man. Most of these people that's in these things that have been presented to us have always been the opposite of what we think they are, because that is the trick. That is why they are always winking their eyes, because the eye, again, is the window to the soul, and they are soulless. You understand? Everything is the opposite of what you're saying. So we keep talking about the grafting of the people and all of that from the apes and all that. But what about the other things that was out there that had the actual like zombie type homunculus, what they call golems or gola, these type of things. These things was out there, and there were people that were basically working to get around them or shut them down too. But some of them was actually civilized enough where people was actually letting them rock, where Moors was letting them rock. One such people were these. I'm trying to find the thing. Wait, where's it? See, the thing is, we're getting it twisted. It's natural for them to be born with certain defects and tails and things like that, because that is just the genome balancing itself out from years of manipulation and stock exchange. A stock exchange is actually another way of saying grafting, because a preferred stock or a livestock is the goyim that you're using in whatever breeding program you're doing to produce a greater outcome. And if I'm trying to create a situation where I don't have to fight and I can use these things to do all the work, then I'm gonna do that. So in Egypt, Greece, and China, when we say Greece, we're talking about Peloponnesia. So we're talking about the Minoans, the Etruscans, the ancient descendants of the Phoenicians and Hebrews that resettled in that area after the fall of Jerusalem, after the first fall of Jerusalem. Further mentions come from the medieval East Europe in modern popular culture. The cyphonephalics, also encountered as characters in books, comics, graphic novels. Cyphonephaly is generally distinguished from lycanthropy, werewolfism, and dogs that can actually talk. Cynocephaly was familiar with the ancient Greeks, whose representations of the Egyptian gods, Dumatef, son of Horus, Wapwawet, Wepwawet, the opener of the ways, and Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead. The Greek word Greek, doghead, also identified the sacred baboon, the Egyptian baboon. So now see, this is the connection. The baboon is the connection between the dog and the monkey. You see what I'm saying? And the baboons are the most savage. They're like chimps. They kill real easy. You understand? They warlike. And they're homosexual. Right? Ctesias, in his Indica, wrote the detailed report on the existence of the Cenocephali in India. Similarly, the Greek traveler Megasthenes claimed to know about the dog-headed people who lived in India. See, always in India. See, deep down in there. Committed through the barking, wore skins of wild animals, and lived by hunting. Herodotus proclaims that the ancient Libyans, who are the who? Who are the ancient Libyans, Moors? Who are the ancient Libyans? Don't say the Moors, I'm saying the nation. Yes, and well, they were the inhabitants. Okay, I see we gotta go over that again. Well, before they were Tartarians, when they was in these air, there you go, the Carthaginians. There you go, Moore. There you go. You're all right, but we do it in the time in which they were called. You see what I'm saying? So if they say ancient Libyans in your mind, that should automatically bring up the Carthaginians, the Tartarians. You see what I'm saying? In Asia, the so-called Macedonians and the people under them. The so-called Hebrew Greeks, who eventually became the Hebrew Greek Roman, the Carthaginian Hebrew Greek Romans that eventually became the Britons and the Scots and the rest of these people. So in their original context, all of those places and those nations were like us, human. Once they were integrated, everything switched. So that was a tale from that, right? So then here we go is a tale from a Moor from Barbary. His name is Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta encountered the dog-mouthed people on his journey in an island somewhere between Hindustan and Sumatra, right? This is during the time of the Mauryan dynasty. You read about them in the Consecrated Talismans, Prince Uriel Bey, the Mauryan and Chandragupta, and the Sind, those dynasties that were the original Dravidians that they eventually, the white Hindu dog people eventually moved out. This tribe is a rabble, professing neither the religion of the Hindus nor any other. They live in reed huts roofed with grasses on the seashore and have abundant banana, acacia, and betel trees. Their men are shaped like ourselves, except that their mouths are shaped like those of dogs. This is not the case with their womenfolk, however, who are endowed with surpassing beauty. Their men to go unclothed, not even hiding their nakedness, except occasionally for an ornamental pouch of reeds suspended from their waist. The women wear aprons, aprons of leaves of trees. With them reside a number of Moors from Bengal and Sumatra who occupy a separate quarter. See that? The natives do all their trafficking with the merchants, the Moors, on the shore and bring them water on elephants because the water is at some distance from the coast and they would not let the merchants go draw it for themselves, fearing their women because they make the advances to the well-formed men, to the Moors. See? Their women want human men. And the Moors is like, nah, just keep bringing me my bread. So then the elephants are numerous in their land, but none may dispose of them except the Sultan. So you see the structure of this society. The Moors are running everything, and there's a detachment of Moors that live there around these things. But because they civilized enough and they women is basically human, they basically keep in order amongst them. You see? Basically watching the experiment. So again, as we see, this is nothing new. This has been going down. So that was in Barbary. This is in Tartary. In Central East Asia, a common calendar system consists of a 12-year cycle, with each year represented as an animal. The 11th animal of the 12th year cycle is the dog, Often such animals are depicted as human figures in ornamental heads. Thus, the scenographic depiction of the 11th zodiac animal is possibly with a tail. Additionally, in Chinese recorded history, the Liang dynasty, the Liang Shu is the Moor, Buddhist missionary Hugh Shang Moor described an island of the dog-headed men to the east of Fusang, a nation he visited variously identified as Japan or the Americas. See? Get that book, The History of the Northern Dynasties of Li and Yang Shu. A Xiang dynasty historian, now you know that's the Moors, also mentions the Dog Kingdom. They just came out with this movie called Island of the Dogs. It's like a claymation animated movie, but it was like high science in it. And it was all about this. Okay? So, this is real. This is St. Christopher depicted as a giant dog man. And this is one of the ones that's, constantly being born around. There's more of these things than you think. They constantly still here. They just hide them. Because most of the inhabitants that took over after the New Madrid earthquake that we call the War of 1812 and then the Civil War and all that stuff after, all of them people was basically just let out of the steppes and all of that. So a lot of them was still illy formed and all that too. You can go online and look at the deformed people that they brought over here from the 1900s. The majority of which were tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to be free, you see. And then that's why they put Attis in the harbor. So that way when they came, all of the Freemasons among them would know that this is the ultimate goal that they're coming into. A truly Freemasonic society that is dedicated to the neutered white male. So there must have been some sort of thing with this too, in which there was a crossbreeding with him, with these dog people, or what was left of them, with the so-called white man or Asiatic, which would explain the intrinsic relationship with the so-called white man and the dog, which again has nothing to do with us. I'm striving to give this with there's no racial tension. Like, I'm not coming out at this to try to make these people seem something that they're not. I'm trying to explain to myself as well as everybody else why it's like this. And again, it's ultimately because of this. This is on the way, and it's not a joke. This was a picture somebody sent me. You understand? You see it? This is why Bill Gates trying to mad scientists block the sun. And these white folk is just like okay with it. That's what I'm saying. Like, y'all be bugging about the wrong thing. You talking about R. Kelly? You talking about this? This nigga is trying to block the sun out. He's trying to literally block your blessing. He is literally trying to shut it down where you can't even receive what the majesty of the heavens is about to bestow on you, because he can't get it. Because as soon as it happened, he just gonna turn to dust. It's not because I say it. This has nothing to do with racism. This is it. Well, according to what happened in aspects of the Bible, it was a means by which the different ancient, super ancient, pre-flood giant kingdoms basically fell one by one to the descendants of those who came out of what we refer to as Egypt, and then coalesced their forces in what they call Midian, which is Shinar, and then decided to go and take all of the kingdoms from these ancient giant megalithic beings with the blessing, or with the ancient weapons that we will refer to as the holy relics that they give to us in movies and stuff like that, that are actually real things that they use or try to use in ritual to this God. But it's different now when you look at it from the perspective of what we're really saying. They're saying that anybody with any type of artificial parts, RH factor, DNA, all that, that's gone almost in an instant. So it becomes a situation where the more we understand how things got that way, the more we can make things happen. You know what I'm saying? And prepare. But we can't prepare if we're constantly being thrust in the idea that we are from somewhere else. You understand? And that's the whole situation. That's being fostered by this energy that's trying to keep everything moving. So they'll give us misdirections. They'll say things like the owl is a symbol of whatever, one of these demons or whatever. But when you see the image they sacrifice it to, it's a cow's head. It's a goyim. It's a big heifer. You know. So this right here, again, evidence of the Moorish presence in America. This is a graph of the actual. This is actually carved out on a giant tree stump in the British Museum, and it laid out the Aztec kingdoms that the Moors ruled during this during the period before the fall and all that. And then this is from the actual book Time Walker, where he lists and shows that each one says, see, Moorish country flag. Each one of these points is where the flags flew as we protected the Aztecs. So the Aztec Empire was the Moors. We did it again. It's all laid out. This book been out before we was born, or when we was real small, from the 70s. And it's from an Indian. There's an Indian saying that the Moors basically ran everything over here and protected everybody from the invading Africans and conquistador Portuguese and Spanish. So I'm just showing you how we do it. And as you see, it's also built on a star fort, which means it was probably built on top of a giant or something. It's an Algerian. Since we were talking about the Algerians, here go his slave. Here go his Mameluke holding his sword for him. See how he got to wear this? See, he got to hold the sword. See that? You got to keep the secret. See how the sword is right by his penis? Because this shows that he's been gilded. He owns him. This is who George Washington and them was. This is what it's really all about. You living in the shadow of us like this. This is not an African. This is an Algerian man. See the jaw? See the brow bone? Right? The hands? This is a Mameluke. Everybody knows what the Mamelukes are, right? Yeah, they tell you that about the Black Dragon Society. They say that's the ones that's rolling on the Rothschilds and got all these people doing their thing, right? But then, or excuse me, they talk about the Bohemian Grove and all of this other stuff and how that's the symbol of their thing. But I'm telling you, you got to remember, every symbol that they're using is from you. It's from your people's empire. And it was a global situation. No, this is what they're sacrificing this stuff to. They're sacrificing to the memory of Tartary. That's why they dress up the way that they dress up during the ritual. See? Out of Ur, Hebur, that's Hebrew. Hebrew. Were Hebrew de Sabel. De Sabel, Jean de Sabel, was the one that founded Chicago, right? Right? Am I bugging? Wasn't there a dude named Jean-Baptiste Sabel who founded Chicago by making a deal with the Indians because he was from the French Haitian Empire? Anybody know that story? Anybody heard that story before? Jean-Baptiste Pont du Sabel. Okay, what does that say? That says du de Sabel, right? That's what that say, right? Right? So that says di or Hebrew de Sabel. So that's basically like he is a Hebrew of the house of Disabel, right? This is Jean-Baptiste Sabel in America. The Moor, the black man. See how they freak it? He was of African descent, but little else is known of his life prior to the 1770s. During his year, he settled in the Great Lakes in Illinois County, changed hands several times amongst the French, Britain, Spain, and New United States. Described as handsome, well-educated, Point de Sabel married a Native American woman, Kituwaha, and they had 2 children. So again, he's a Moor. During the Revolutionary War, arrested the British military, suspicion of being an American sympathizer. In the early 1790s, worked for the British Lieutenant Governor. So he worked for everybody because he was always there. He was an inhabitant. And he was cool with the so-called Indians because he was a descendant from the ancient Tartars and he was a Hebrew. So we just proved all of that in like 2 seconds. We can now connected John de Subel to the Tartarian Empire and shown that there's aspects of the Tartarian Empire that was Hebrew. And the original flag, the Drake owl, and the so-called Bohemian people that they think that they worshiping and doing all that, they really worshiping us in the form of the owl, because this is also the symbol of the word Moor in ancient so-called Egyptian Islam. So I don't know what these people think they be talking about. And Allah is merciful because he throws all types of stuff out there. I just be on the internet sometimes watching, and I be preparing, and then just be stuff already done. So I ain't even gotta, boom, here you go in Phoenician. It's you in Phoenician. More, right? Here you are. See, same thing. More. Here you are in Hebrew. Light. What gives off light? Look at the color. Look at the color that they wrote King James in Strong's. Look. The purple, the violet purple, right? Which is the Murex, right? Which is what the Phoenicians used to make, right? The ultraviolet, right? Light, bright, strong, one of light. So it means love. It means one of light. It means bringer of light and what gives off light. So there must be some aspect of translumination that manifests off of this during this process that they've been trying to retard by making us worship an androgynous god through fictitious things like masonry and through fictitious things like sectarian, Republican, Democrat, Crip blood, all of this other stuff. None of that stuff is real. The only thing is real is this, because this is the only thing that is not associated with slavery. This is the only thing that don't have RNH, rhesus monkey DNA. This is the only thing that was fighting back against the invaders. It was the only thing that maintained civilization through the Dark Ages. It was the only thing that made the tough decisions, aka Genghis Khan wiping out 1.5 million of them. That's what it takes. That's what he do. That's what this person has instigated people to do since it's been on the planet. So why are we so reluctant to understand that the ultimate aspect of its aspiration is to take us down with it? Look, 19. Everything associated with Moors is great. That's why you have people, as they say, agents or whatever, who do what they do to try to, turn you against it, because they know we don't really understand that these people can't be right, because they don't come from what is native or original. You understand? Like, what kind of clause is this? What kind of clause is this? What kind of animal was this nigga killing to wear this? You understand? This, albeit great, albeit spiritual, all that, this is a girl. So it's cool, but you can't look at it from the perspective of it being actually like this, because this is realer than this, because this is actually taken from something real. This was created off of this, but this is perverted because it's given to us in a double fold fashion. This is really a girl. So we're praising it like a man, but secretly, subconsciously, we've already known what it is. So we're conflicted with ourselves because it's still a good message, even though it's got all of the satanic stuff in it. You see what I'm saying? That's the problem. That's the problem with so-called what people refer to as the craft or Freemasonry. This is the type of people that they are promoting. You understand? That's not how a society is supposed to function. You're not supposed to have people like that doing stuff like this. That's why we were always repelling them. That's why we were always subjugating them. That's why there were epochs of time where they were just banished to caves. There's a whole, Plato wrote a whole story about it. I think it's called At the Cave. Read it. They were so deep in it, they thought that the cave was the real world. They thought that was it. Then they start popping out, trying to come where we at. So when we talk about the original German, the Strathbourg Moors, or the Moors of the late dynasties that was getting pushed out from the 1400s all the way up into the late 1700s, you have a series of different people. Then you have the Normans, who are using the genetic ones, because Norman mean black man. So they brought buckwheat. They brought the type of food that was different from the rest of that was different from the native culture. And they brought the wild Caucasians with them to do most of the fighting and the killing and all that. So they wore them down. And then they forced the Normans to do all of that. And then from there, the Witenagemont basically went dormant. What's the Witenagemont? Let's get that. All of that stuff we be reading about with Thor and Odin and all that stuff is our history. It's literally our history. We lived it. Our ancestors lived that shit. And these niggas have come and they took a little piece of it when we left the pyramids and left the temples, and then they moved in the same way we did with the giants. You see what I'm saying? And it all started with the wall. It all started with the fall of the wall. Before I read that, these are just look all these Bible verses against Freemasonry. Look. Look how many verses in the Bible is against that shit, son. Look at that shit, son. Like, damn. I didn't even know till I really look. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn. Look, you really not supposed to be dealing with that stuff, B. Like, if you take this stuff as true, if you take the Bible as true, and you are in that, you really need to. They need to just make a Bible that's just on that. That just is a bunch of Bible verses That's just saying you're gonna go to hell if you keep doing these rituals with these devils. You know what I'm saying? Look, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the element of spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. See? Jesus said to him, I am the way. Yeah, we know that one. Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly to the world. I have also taught in the synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Exactly. See? That's why we winning. Because the less you engage in what the world is talking about, the folly that the world is projecting with this thing, the more you can focus on getting your thing straight. The carpenter stretches a line. He marks it out with a pencil. He shapes it with planes and marks it with a compass. He shapes it into the future of a man with the beauty of a man to dwell in a house. You hear that? He telling you that's the Addis worship. That's the Addis worship. That's what I'm talking about. The stone builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and that is us. We are the cornerstone that they built this fiction on. You understand? We're the spell that they work with these fallen so-called demons or whatever you want to call them, dog men, grafted devils, right? Who parade as Freemasons, who act like bankers, who act like actors, who act like cops, who act like that's not what they are. We're not dealing with human things. We're dealing with things that appear human. But they're not, because they're not in their natural archetype. They're switched. So whatever they appear as has to be the opposite. That's what the scrolls was about. And they knew Captain Marvel and made the scrolls the refugees, because the Crees was trying to wipe them out. But in the comics, the scrolls is the ones that's infiltrating all of the governments and trying to make everybody serve a hive mind. See how they flip it? Look. Ephesians, for by the grace of God you have saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it's a gift from God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. You understand? I am astonished. Wait, who's a good one? Yeah, but stuff like that. But I'll get into, and I'm gonna start reading some of these as we go through stuff, so this way you understand. Like this type of law gets you out of shit. Because this is God telling them that they can't do whatever. And even if you don't believe it, they believe this stuff. They base their whole thing on this. This is all about the next reset with the plasma thing. This is the coming of the revelation. You understand? This is the rise. This is the coming of what they call Dajjal. Like people may not believe this stuff, but this is what these people have been planning and working on since 1582. When they invented 1582, because up until at that point in 1582 was actually 582. They time jumped themselves and then regressed us back and then used the wild barbarians as the ones to reseat the seats in the Vatican and things like that. Let me see. Yeah, so we already established that John Dispel was a Tartaran Asiatic Moor from France who married a native woman and founded Chicago. Like, that's why ain't there no movie about that? Because if they did, they probably try to make them like real light-skinned dude, or they try to make them white and then give them a black girl, as if everybody was into interracial marriage back then when there was no white people. Like, they'd be crazy with it, man. Where is this thing at? So this, when you read this, this is the covenant. I read this in the other joint, but this is the covenant between Canaan and the Israelites and all of that. So all of that Israelite, whether Moors or Hebrew Israelites, all that, like, let them deal with that, man. That ain't got nothing to do with us. The reflection of that came when those ancient peoples reconsolidated themselves and basically worked out what we was going to do with the devils from that point. And so a mystic council was erected called the Wittenagamoth. dedicated to keeping the ancient and the pristine, the ancient ways and the super ancient customs and the ancient weapons and ordinances in different regions and different places, and basically rule, protect them through the various empires and dynasties that will come from those people that were related to them. You understand? That's why we say it was one big family. And there were different councils and things like that that checked in with this thing, that made sure that everybody around the world had their thing, and they kept it going through the trade. So you had the so-called Iroquois Haudenosaunee Confederacy. You see what I'm saying? That was then protected by the Delaware Moors or whatever, who did the commerce with the British, who then did the commerce from the Britain to the Sultan, you see what I'm saying, of Morocco and all that. And then he then gave bread or got bread from the Grand Seignior in Turkey, and then he was cool with the Khan. You see what I'm saying? It was like one giant thing. And at different times, certain people tried to flip different measures. And one of those tactics was to use these gilded Mamelukes to be able to make a run on the throne. This was the birth of peerage. They named themselves after and came in from. They were freed and accepted and made sons of whatever dynasty was ruling over them or castrating them or whatever it was doing. So the Witenagemot, also spelled Waitenagemot, was simply the Witan or the Witan or the Witten or the Wotan. Like Odan and Wotan, same thing. So this was Asgard, which is why in the movies, the way to Asgard was protected by the black man who could see into infinity. And without him, nobody could open the gate, right? The Rainbow Bridge, right? Which was the spectrum, right? None of this has anything to do with them. This is all about them trying to create us and turn us into Addis worshippers. Baphomet is them coming into the 32nd degree where they become Shriners and Muslims and start to praise the Prophet and all that in secret. Start to read the Quran and do all of that. That was the whole ritual where the Pope had to kiss the dude on the mouth who was running Islam, to show that the Muslims and all of them had now been officially compromised, if they still mess with it. That version of it, at least. So in America, the House of Witenagemot, James had, from the House of Witenagemot, got the Shakespeare in them to then start flipping the Bible. Him, Angela Bassano, a Portuguese princess from the Braganza family. And they worked that out, while at the same time the dirty Venetian Moors, namely people like Musianos and Sarpe and what's his name, Cartellini and Loyola and Weishaupt and Amschel, Rothschild, and the rest of them, that were the gilded Mameluke slaves that were keeping the money on behalf of the kings, because that's what they used, the so-called the counts of Anjou, right? The ones I showed you from Russia, they were in Russia and England, they were the ones who used them as money changers, Shylocks. And they were the ones that made money off of their own people going through this process. These again were descended from the ancient so-called Hellenistic period in time, when they worshipped this god, castrated god I showed you, who was called the Areopagite. And in that, as spoken of in Acts 3, 1734, it gets into the whole aspect of how the Chalcedonians, who are descended from the Chaldeans, basically used the mysticism basically to kick these dudes out of every civilized place in the ancient world, in which they were finally banished to a mountain, a cave called Areopagus, Mount Areopagus, and they became known as Areopagites. And there they created little dances and little things and little stone gods and all of that, and then started to, mate with whatever animals and whoever was up in there, whether it be the dog-headed people that we saw or the Neanderthal, who were the so-called Horites at this time, who were descendants of Esau. But when we say that, we're not saying that Esau as a black man had babies with these things. It's more like these things were able to take an aspect of whatever his genetics, and then whoever was under him started to graft these type of things that turned out like this. And then they start to crossbreed them. You see? So they were also referred to as griffins. A griffin is a white newcomer from the Orient, especially one from the caves of Western Europe. That's from an old Webster's dictionary. So we say Peter Griffin, the griffins that's on the sides of buildings, those are actually depictions of white males. Islam? Because that's what a griffin is. A gargoyle, a little demon. And that's what depictions of what they used to look like. They don't remember, they don't create nothing. So I'm thinking we may have used those things as images to remind us that this is what these things are. Don't mess with them like that. So from those griffins, basically during the Hellenistic period, merged this bastardized culture because they had all been infested with the demons that was left over from the flood, called the succubus and the incubus. These are male demons that appear male and female demons that appear female, and vice versa. Sound familiar? So during that Hellenistic period, the foundations of those cities that was dealing with Alexander, really Alexander wasn't in control. Carthage was in control of Macedonia during this time, when you get the records. So this means that this was really a Carthaginian expansion, and Alexander was just the face. Yeah. And that's in that cartoon take place in a big Tartary castle on top of a skyscraper, right? Big Barbary castle right on top of the skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. Exactly. See what I'm saying? They be throwing it right in our face, man. You know how many rituals they do in the museums at night? So the Macedonian power, the newly conquered region, they tried the dirty amount. At this time, these are the descendants of the so-called Hellenized Greeks, meaning the sodomite type blacks that were dealing in the Babylonian ways because they were far away from their native thing, and they was trying to enforce their way of Greek education on people. And that Greek education that they was trying to do was based in that old savagery that was left over from them as incubus and succubus after the flood. So these were the descendants of these things that creeped into these people or replaced these people and then basically lived as them or influenced them to then bring this Bati culture to the world. The Yaqubians. But there was the black Yaqub, children Yaqub, us, Israel, and then you got, these Yaqubites that we call, the Neanderthals or whatever. The same way you had Esau and then you had the Horites that he created. It wasn't like he did it himself or whatever. It's like whatever blood type they use to create these things is always going to be inferior because the intent that they're doing it is to outshine Allah, and it'll never happen. So they started to create gymnasiums to get people in and start teaching them how to wrestle and do all of this gay stuff. And people wasn't with it. And so they banished them, like I said. And so right there was there, that's when they started to really get into the added stuff and then castrate themselves and then do all of this and then create different grips. So that way when they left and go to different places in the world, they would meet other people who was down with them and they would recognize them by the grips. And the ritual went all the way back from when we marched them across the hot Arabian desert, which is why they have to ride the goat, because that's the goat that they rode when they couldn't walk. They have to blindfold themselves because they know that they wasn't going to find a way back. And then we put the apron around them because some of these dudes have vaginas. And we didn't want to see that. And so the days developed and delicates developed, which were little places where corsairs who were white freebooters. Again, see, freebooters who would sell themselves out to whatever Moor to go and do whatever fight he needed against whatever dirty Moor, or kidnap other Caucasian people and bring them back for slavery and gilding. But the white women were always separated, remember? And so eventually these whites met the dog people or whatever, and the apes or whatever, and then eventually started to really collect their situation. And so from that point, they collected the tribute from all of the Moors. That would be people like him. This is a day. See, a Mameluke, okay? A Freemason, a freed and made son who has to keep the sword over his privates because he's not really a man. So his bones is not forming properly, and he has to do it. So you got to wear the shirt because he don't got no Adam's apple. So you can see his Adam's apple from here. So from there, Constantine, then came Tittery, which is Tartary. Again, you see how Tartary and Barbary is always doing business? But these niggas is acting like we didn't have no contact and it was this, but we all the same people in the same empire. Because they don't have a nationality that connects them to none of this. And we bounced all of that from over here. And so this administered by a bey. The bey at this time, basically in 1830, he lost the day ship and the trade stopped. So then by the modern slave trade started now, because now they couldn't buy the white slaves because Napoleon was bought all of them up and promised them all freedom if they fought for him against the Moorish French Republic, which was the Moors, Antoinette and them over there, and Toussaint and them over here. You see? And then after him came the new French Republic, you see, which was now the fake amalgamated thing left over with all of these reprobate, newly freed Europeans that was now going to walk into these new places and stuff and act like they set it up. And so by the end of all of that, Yusuf, who was the last day, decided that he would compensate the losses to the Sultan by setting up the Trans-Saharan slave trade. So this says that the transatlantic slave trade was set up by white Mameluke Deys in order to pay back money to the Sultan that they were supposed to be getting in from importing white Negro slaves. That's what this say. The Trans-Saharan slave trade, that's what they say, right? That's where they got the Africans, the descendants of those Africans that was, again, a part of the mixing, a part of the genetic manipulation. That's why they felt they could get them, the ones from the Congo and all that. Because Alfonso had married into the European family, and he promised his people as fodder to them for his titles and all that. Look it up. So these African conquistador invaders, these Africans, the slave descendants, you claim a descendant from the invaders. You claim a descendant from the Freemasons who was working with these castrados, whose voices was different. I ain't gonna read all this again, but essentially the castrados' body grew with the lack of testosterone in the epiphysis, in the bone joints. That's why they had to wear the scarves and all that around their necks. That's why they had to wear the aprons to hide their nakedness, also to hide how big their hips is. But some of them fought to the end for the Moors against the other dirty Moors who was using their own fighters against those Moors. So you had the Janissaries who would fight against whatever white Europeans that they done grafted to fight for the Moors in Europe or whatever. And this is what it became. And so from the Janissaries, the Osman Ali Turks under Murad I, it's the 1300s, so you know it's the Moors, which means it's not 13, it's 362 to 369. They began the elite core of Christian boys who were converted to Islam and became famed for the internal cohesion and cemented by the strict discipline and order. These became known as the delegates. The place that they ruled was called a delegate. The place that they ruled was called the delegate. And in the delegate, they could have dominion over whatever slave carry-on that was passing through in order to go to the Sultan. And they had to protect it. These were the Asiatic, these were the Moorish version of the Templars. Okay? So this delicate that they lived in became the premier place that they used to function as a body politic, where they now could unify and they could commiserate on how they were going to find a way out of their eternal position, which was to always be a slave. Hold on, y'all. So to put it bluntly, all these guys became the descendants of the Mamelukes. Everybody that we see as like somebody that had to do with the evolution of whatever government was out there, they were all really Muslim sons. That's why the Prophet said that they were the secret protectors of Islam. All of these guys were girls. All of these guys, these Freemasons, they were all descended from these Mamelukes, Janissaries, privateers, corsairs, who all secretly descended from those Areopagite cults from the Hellenistic period that were the leftover sodomite cults of the ancient world that had been washed away during the last plasma event, which allegedly caused the flood. So all of the Freemasonry and that stuff is just to get everybody into the idea that that way is the way into the Enlightenment. And they've been using the descendants of the dirty Moors that put us in that predicament to this position. Sorry, y'all. 1 second. They've been using these people over and over again, but making us think that, or to make us think that we're really like moving ahead, but we're not. They're not. These Moors that they put in front of us every day as the ones to do whatever, they're the ones that have descended from the ones that was always down with all this stuff. That's why they see themselves and act the way they do, because a lot of them is actually not even their own so-called sex. It's one big joke, B. And once they get down with it and they really see that this is what they're going to have to go through, it's over. This is synonymous with this. Remember I told you they were Mamelukes, Janissaries, Hellenists, right? From the Negro, Javara, Araba, super chimpanzees that we can break down into the different aspects of the Java man and this man and all of the different types of whatever. But that's all they DNA because our ancestors is the ones that worked on it. And whenever it got too much, Allah hit the button and it was a wrap. This is the eye of Sauron that you saw in the Lord of the Rings. This is the eye that you see in the top of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The eye. Whenever you see the eye looking like that, this is what it's representing, really. It ain't got nothing to do with it. It's them trying to appear as it. But this is eternal. This is the manifestation of what is to manifest within all of us. This is basically symbolic of this. See how the colors are similar? See what they doing to them? See how we used to do it to them? This is part of our culture too. When they tried to come in and thought they had it, and it didn't work out for them the way that they thought. This is in Kubanakan. Kubanakan is what Cuba was. Get the book Primitive African Primitive Nations in America. Or Primitive Aboriginal Nations in America, something like that. By Rafinesque. Another devil, but he kept it real in that. See what she doing to him? See what she doing to him? With the same sword. The same sword we seen in that image that I showed you earlier, right? Look, they had kidnapped her, tried to enslave her while she was pregnant. So she get the honors. See? Going right to her now. This is the nurse. This is what's to come for them. And they want to be able to get away from it. See the dog? See the dog? See the dog in the fake Bible? Look, there's a dog there, and then it looked like a goat. It looked like a little goat. See, Moors? The overturned chrysanthemums, which represent Christmas, Christ. All of this represent Christianity being overturned. Look at the dog, the black and white, the grafting, like the black and white speckled cow in Genesis. Read about it. This is what's coming for them. This is the manifestation. This is, see how she got the sun? See? Coming to do work. That's this. This is manifest in all of us. Because the only way I think we're going to be able to do it is to vibrate to the level to become this. That's why they doing all of the stuff to us, man. That's why they want us to be gay. That's why they want to do all that. That's why they want us to be Freemasons like these niggas. But I showed you the Freemasons is the Mamelukes. That's them. When they become down with that, look, remember they found all them bodies under Benjamin Franklin house? That might have been the time he might have been gave birth to them babies, and then they used them and ate them and did the things they did with them. Because it's their nature. That's what they do. It has nothing to do with our moral understanding. You will never understand what it's like to be them. Never. And the problem is the Negro has tried to forever. So they've created this whole fictitious society where all of this stuff that we think is real ain't. None of these niggas really even existed the way we thought. These guys were all slaves because this uniform was the slave uniform. The Whigamores, who were called the Covenanters, they decided that they weren't down with the white people being able to be around. And at the Battle of Preston, the Whigamores later shortened to the Whigs, termed the Kirk Party. They were against the engagement with King Charles and the Committee of the Estates to be thrust out of Edinburgh, which took refuge in Monroe's protecting at Stirling. So what this meant was that the Whigamores wasn't with Charles, basically joining up with the Committee of Estates, because that was actually being backed by some of the Venetian dirty people, like I told you. These niggas, Cartellini and Loyola and them, And what they were doing, they were stacking the deck with the fake Vatican because they had did a purge against the Cathars, got rid of all of those Christian Moors, the ones that helped build the cathedrals with the giants, got rid of all the Albigensians. You never hear people talk about these people. And then after the Norman invasion, shut all that down, and then start to build up the revenue and the white slaves to be able to corner the market and then come over here and take everything from us. That's what they do. That's what they did. And we worked against that, the Moors. Not the Africans, because the Africans were in league with them. Alfonso and a lot of the other Christian powers, not Askil Muhammad, not Sunni Ali Bey, not the other one, I forget, there was another great one too, of Mali and all that. They didn't do that. They fought against all that. The great Bambaras and the Traza and the Draha and the Faz and the Sa and the Suha, all of these are different Moorish tribes that's connected to us because they was connected to the coast. And you know they are because they get to grow beards and shit. You see what I'm saying? That little factor alone shows you connection genetically that shows that we now all the same people, and that's okay. But for them to try to indoctrinate us to be into this would then mean that we eventually are going to go into slavery, which takes us away from this. So before we go, I wanted to just show you this. And yeah, this is the empire. See, this is the Kazan Kremlin is what they built. The three kings. They put money up for all of that. The Kazan Kremlin was built by the Kazan Khanate, and it was conquered by Ivan the Terrible. That's when they destroyed Old Tartary, took all the buildings, and that's when the Ivan the Terrible and them was descended from these people. Rasputin and all them, those were the dirty Moors that was trying to mix in with the amalgamated Moors in these royal houses in Europe. And a lot of them was trying to flee and come back over here. But we wasn't letting all of them come because of their admixture. So only the nobles was getting through. And that pissed off the white Freemasonic bankers that was working with the consortium of Venice through the Catholic Church. So everybody talk about it, but essentially we are always at the head. See the Moor? Look the Moor with the Tartaran together. Look. Together, Moors. Together. All right. So the word Kremlin means fortress. Krem. Cream. The Fulad people were in so-called Africa, whatever. See, Mongol Empire. Here you go. All of this, the Golden Horde, the Moors. You see how it's in the shape of like a bear or something? That's the bear of Russia. Also, that same bear you see as the flag of California, because at one time Russia and California was connected. Just like one time California was an island. But they were also connected to the Fulani, and they're the ones that brought the Bantu language to everybody. But that's kind of late, towards the 19th century, though. See the Moors shutting Rome down, giving him the sword, giving him the option. We could have peace now, or we could fight right now, or you could just get shut down. Look how we got the elephants. Always with the elephants. Always with the turbans. Always with the fezzes. I already showed you the Moorish dynasty, the Moorish alcave in the, what you call it? Here go the king of Poland. Remember we saw the skull from Poland? Look. See, that's a man. See the Adam's apple, see the jaw, see the eyes? It's a man. See, you got the Tammuz cross, the Tartarian cross. It's supposed to be Shakespeare. right here. Shakespeare. There was one I was looking for, trying to show y'all. Hold up. Before we go. Oh, wait. There's so much, man. This is why we like polo and all that, because of all this stuff. So again, man, they didn't run Europe. Here go Frederick Douglass' ancestor, Kenneth Dubglass, who was the Bey of Hibernia, which they now call India. He was the head Hebrew of the time. You see, he's got the same headpiece. If you look at the kings in the Zulu tribe, they wear headpieces like this. They're just smaller. So as you can see, everybody come from somewhere. Frederick Douglass' father was also a Moor. The book Baha'i Brazil, Slave Revolts. Look, the real Vikings. Look, this is National Geographic. Look where they made the Vikings. The Moors in the red and the green ships. So don't hate on me. Don't hate on us. Hate on what you call it. Yeah. So this is Hugh de Payon. This is the bey that ran the delegate that they called the Templars. They all answered to him. Jacques de Molay and all of them, those were his gilded slaves, his Mamelukes. These were the three Moors heads that he took at the battle to establish Jerusalem for that little delegate. And then he put the Deys in charge of it for him. He also was cool with El Cid, who they called Godfrey de Bouillon. He got his stripes against the Moors in Granada and eventually was also in the so-called First Crusade. Because the wars with Granada, there was huge peace, but in the hinterlands, these dudes would always be trying to come up. And because they used the wild Caucasians as enemy, as, fighters for them. If I could just find this real quick. Let me see. Anybody have any questions before we close out? I got one where I got some of the flags with the Bible verses with them. So remember, when you talk about the white germ, there was all of these things, these different groups. They're all Germans. They're all made. They're all grafted. They were never Italians, Greeks, Romans, none of that. The way you know, because look, this was the boundaries of the so-called Roman Empire in the 5th century BC. The Roman Republic in the 44th BC, and then the Holy Roman Empire in 962 BC. But this also is the dominions of the Moorish Empire. So how could it be all three the same aspects of the dominion in three different epochs of time? Because it's the same people. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, here we go. So in the family of nations, this was the lost Almoroccan flag of the Sephardic Moors of Andalusia. So based on this in Isaiah 5:26, this is what gets you the right of return there. This is the flag that goes with the Bible verse that go with the Manasseh flag of the Haudenosaunee peoples, what they call the ancient de jure government, representing the four corners that we talked about earlier. See? And the giant cedar tree of Lebanon. That's what the tree is. Whenever you see the tree, that's representing the cedar tree of Lebanon. The giant trees that went into the top of the dome, like a geranium. That allegedly the angels cut down, they say. Also, humans, when they die, they can't become angels because angels are their own entities, their own given aspects of fire. You can't become that. This is the Haitian imperial flag. This is the flag of the Haiti Empire. That's why you see Desaulniers and them in admiral gear. See the red and the green? See the red and the green lotus flower? See? Showing the allegiance to the Moors. When we talk about the French Empire in America fighting against the dirty Moors, whatever, we talking about Haiti. Same thing in South America. So that's Isaiah 11:11. Then you got the feathered serpent flag, Quetzalcoatl of the Tumahuancan Empire. And Tumahuancan was a derivative of the tribes that were from the Aztecs and the Incas and stuff that grouped up under the banner of Tamoa. You could look that up, but that's in Proverbs. Then lastly, let me see. You got Matthew 27. Again, that's the South Carolina flag. That's Charles V, 24:27. This is maybe kind of suspect. I don't know. I've been trying to find more aspects of it. This flag is what they would put over territories that was basically bound for civilization, or like in front of caves and stuff that they was going to bring the devils out. Then this is an interesting one. This is the Great Star of the Alamo flag, and you see it's a 5-pointed star. And then we have the national flag of Grenada of the Almohad. So that's Joshua 6, which would make sense because it's dealing with the fall. And everything started with us as the people moving up or whatever from the fall of Jericho. So when we speak of the astrological signs and the stars and stuff like that, if we accept the model of the dome, then we accept that these exist within the firmament of that, which is why they're so indicative of our so-called galaxy and why they're fixed to such a finite number as 13, even though there allegedly was 88 different galaxies that's out there. Nah, I didn't hear that. You see how they try to discriminate against Moors? But you could go in there and tell them niggas that you don't have a vagina, even though you're a man, and they got to give you whatever you want. You see why Allah is going to bring this thing about? It don't matter. There's a way around that too. You can't, that's what I'm saying. Like, the most they could do is keep what they doing. This is the numbers, the Continental Confederation, Numbers 2:2, and then Leviticus 25:10. You can get into those and see how they correspond. Because it's all made for us, man. It's just that we Moors, we never gave up, B. I don't know what to say. And we'll end it with this. Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. That's what all this is. This that you keep saying that, oh, this is the light, this represent them where they are. No, this represent they cut off phallus, B. This represent the black penis, and this represents how they've circumscribed it and had they little, castrated thing up there. That's what this is. But again, remember, they're devils, so they use many different layers to hide their objective. That's really the coming event that they won't be able to withstand. No matter where and how much they have, no matter where they are, it will not matter. We, people like this, we are the ones that represent them today. And because we didn't sell out and we didn't do that, and because we understand who the Mamelukes and all of that stuff was and why it happened, we're not able to move to the higher octave, and they can't. And so they've invented flying saucers and Nuburu and all of that, and put all of these trannies in front of us since the day we've been born to throw off what we even understand a man look like. But it's inside of us. Look, it's inside of us. We can't get away from it even if we try. So all of these people that talk about that, See, there was another aspect of it, that those people that in the ancient times fell victim to that, this at one point in history towards the end became a symbol of the possession. You see? Like they were put in the areas where people was under that, which is why Egypt fell. Because they started believing the hype. They started turning the actual mausoleums and stuff into tombs for money. The priesthood made money from all the people from all over the world coming there to get herbs and stuff like that. But most of them have been cut off from the ancient world. So, anybody else? See how naturally a Fez would go on top of this? And you would never know. You see what I'm saying, Moors? You can naturally put a Fez right on top of that little turban. You never even know. Anybody else? There's so much I couldn't even get through half of it. But yeah, with the Social Security thing, they just trying to block people because we've been making it happen. And it's legal. It's totally legal. So how you going to make it illegal now? How is it illegal for me to use a court-ordered document that you said up until yesterday I needed to correct my name? So I'm complying with the law and you making up shit. Why? Why? You see, it's hypocrisy. So we as a people have to fight it. But we got to do it in a proper person, man. So when it go down, we know what we could get. And we know how to move, you know what I mean? Anybody else? Okay. Okay. So yeah, man, Islam, thank you guys for coming through again. Thank you for $30 to duketears@gmail.com. Yep, this is Christopher II of Denmark. September 29th, 276 to 332, King of Denmark. Look at the black man. You know what I'm saying? The Asiatic black man running it still. So we coming back, man. We got him on the ropes. This is going to be on time. So inshallah, let's prepare. Let's keep our bodies clean with water. Prophet was telling us something. The more water you got in your body, the more you'll be able to absorb. See what I'm saying? So again, man, when you see this image on this circle with the sun around it, on one level it's the sun, on another level it's an anus, but on the highest level that they're not even telling their own people is this. And we're going to get into how we are triggering this to happen right now, which is why they're scrambling and doing so much stuff to throw us off. But we are all collectively making this happen. We are making it warmer. Our consciousness is actually lifting the vibration of the planet and making it warmer. Lastly, research the thing they put out that said that they killed so many people in the beginning when they came over here that it decreased the heat signature on the whole planet and helped trigger the ice age. So think about that in relationship to what I'm saying now. And we'll get into more of that next time. All right. Thanks.